Aditya Jyot, Dr. A.P.J. Abdul Kalam Oration on this virtual platform. A very good evening to all those who have tuned in from India, and a good morning to all of you from the US. Welcome to this program. Before we start with the program, as is customary, we would like to begin with a short invocation to Goddess Saraswati, the Lord of Learning. Join me as we listen to this clip for a few seconds. To those of you who are not familiar, this is the goddess of learning that we invoke her blessings before we begin something that is either academic or something related to that. Next, I would like to request you all, Srimati Swarna Tammal, the late grandmother of Dr. Natarajan, just passed away uh, 15 days ago. And I would like to request you all to observe a minute of silence as we seek her blessings. She lived up to the ripe age of 103. So I would just take a minute to request you all to observe a minute of silence. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Now, as we officially launch this program, I would like to request Dr. Aishwarya Iyer to start with the welcome address. Aishwarya.
You have to unmute. Aishwarya, you have to unmute.
Yes, sorry. Am I audible now? Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Hello and good evening to one and all present here. On behalf of Aditya Jyot Foundation for Twinkling Little Eyes, I am pleased to have the honor of welcoming one and all present here for the 4th Dr. A.P.J. Abdul Kalam Oration Award, which also happens to be the first virtual one. First, I'd like to take the I would like to extend a warm welcome to our awardee, a very special guest of honor, Dr. Michael F. Chiang. Practicing ophthalmologist, Dr. Chiang is the Knowles Professor of Ophthalmology and Medical Informatics and Clinical Epidemiology at the Oregon Health and Science University, Portland, and Associate Director of the OHS UKC Institute. He is now all set to begin his new role as the Director of the National Eye Institute in late 2020. I heartily welcome you, sir. Now, I would like to welcome our Board of Trustees, headed by Mr. Anantraman, sir, and Vice Chairperson, Mrs. Shamala Gopinathan, with Dr. Anil Kulkarni and Mr. Uday Salunke. Next, I extend my welcome to Dr. S. Natarajan, sir, my guru and mentor, founder and chairperson and managing trustee of the Aditya Jyot Foundation for Twinkling Little Eyes. His unmatched energy and effervescence is what is making this program so bright and sparkling. Welcome, sir. I would also like to welcome Dr. Radhika Krishnan, Medical Director, Aditya Jyot Eye Hospital. Her impeccable planning and flawless execution is why we are here to conduct this program virtually today. I welcome you, ma'am. A hearty and warm welcome to our doctors, Dr. Satyanarayana Murthy Ayuri, Consultant and Cataract Surgeon, Dr. Astha Jain, Consultant VR Surgeon, and Dr. Amit B. Jain, Consultant VR Surgeon at Aditya Jyot Eye Hospital. They, along with the ROP team of optometrists, technicians, are an integral cog in the Aditya Jyot ROP Prevention Initiative. My welcome also extends to the tireless Mr. Mohan Hindpur, Administrator of the Aditya Jyot Foundation. And last, but most definitely not the least, I would like to welcome my warmest and heartiest greetings to our beloved audience watching live on Facebook and YouTube. Without you, this event wouldn't be half as much fun. I welcome you all with open arms and sincerely pray that together we will combat retinopathy of prematurity together to save the sight of these premature newborns. I now invite Dr. Murthy to tell us more about the Aditya Jyot Foundation for Twinkling Little Eyes.
And we also welcome our new friend, Jayashree, who's originally from Bombay and now it's Mumbai. Thank you, Jayashree, for joining us.
Welcome, ma'am.
No birthday ka pare no.
Okay. Our Kelma Radhika Kankan.
Hello.
Yes, Mr. Anandraman, sir.
Not able to. Audibility is not there.
No, he's not still talking. Dr. Murthy? Dr. Murthy, you have to unmute yourself.
Good evening and good morning to everyone. I would be introducing or I would be speaking about Aditya Jyot Trust, which is known as Aditya Jyot Foundation for Twinkling Little Eyes. Now, Aditya Jyot Foundation came into existence in 2005, and that was the time when our then President of India, Dr. A.P.J. Abdul Kalam, had visited Aditya Jyot Eye Hospital. And it was his suggestion and guidance which motivated Dr. Natarajan so as to start the foundation on 30th of June 2005. Now, the primary goal and our vision of at Aditya Jyot is to provide quality eye care services to everyone, like which can be affordable to even the low socioeconomic groups, and having an active community participation for the same. Now, our accomplishments, there are some statistics which are there over here that we have touched so far more than 8 million lives. And there has been an awareness which has been conducted across around 230,000 households in the slums. Then 98,172 slum dwellers have been screened for diabetes. More than 1,500 camps have been conducted so far in the state of Maharashtra. About 2,000 diabetics are evaluated every year. Then around 140,000 children screened for eye diseases. And we have been, or the work which is being conducted at Aditya Jyot Foundation for Diabetic Retinopathy has been acclaimed by the World Diabetes Federation as well. Our work has been highlighted in international corners of American Society of Retina Specialists as well. Now, our outreach centers are located at in areas called as Dharavi, Kandivali, and Mulund in the city of Mumbai, through which we are able to actively go into the community and do our work and conduct the various kinds of studies, treatments, everything. Now, the care which is provided at these centers includes a comprehensive care. We provide vision screening is done, glasses are provided, then evaluation of various disorders, including cataract, retinal problems, glaucoma, squint, pediatric problems, and even lasers for diabetic retinopathy are conducted. Even we have a mobile van which has these lasers installed in them so that we can reach every nook and corner of the city where people don't have access to such healthcare. Now, our retina center in the area of Mulund in the city is known as Aditya Jyot Mahatmya Advanced Vitreoretinal Center. Over there, we have various facilities like the OCTs, FFAs, then intravitreal injections, various kinds of retinal surgeries. Everything is conducted over there under the guidance and through active participation of Dr. Natarajan. Now, the camp activities, we have general camps where comprehensive eye testing is done. Then we have school screening camps for children. Then camps for special population groups like truck drivers, orphans, and other vulnerable groups. Then special camps for police personnel, pediatric camps in the slums, which is known as the Pearls Project, as we call it. Then diabetic retinopathy camps, which is known as the Aditya Jyot Drums Study. And there is stop blindness in the BMC dispensaries. Now, BMC dispensaries are by the Municipal Corporation of Mumbai, where we have an active participation along with them so as to conduct the diabetes at such places. Now, general eye screening camps are being done just again in photographic form, which is being shown over here. Eye camps for truck drivers, then special camps for orphans and other vulnerable groups, special camps for police people, police personnel. Now, our service projects, now these are the projects which are currently underway. One is known as the CREAM project, where we have the Children's Refractory Error Eye Ailment Management Project 1, then A.J. Drums, which is a large-scale diabetic retinopathy screening project and treatment project, which is going on in the urban Mumbai, like slum areas of Mumbai. Then there is the Pearls project, which is Pediatric Eye Anomalies, Refractive Error and Traumatic Lesion Study. And there is Stop Blindness Initiative with the Mumbai Municipal Corporation. Now, the CREAM project, it is the goals of this particular project are to detect the eye disease in children before they can damage their vision irreversibly, and to increase the awareness in children among the among the teachers and the parents who are the ones who are in constant contact at such an age so as to impact the lives of children. Then the A.J. Drums study. Now, this is a large-scale study which we are very proud of at Aditya Jyot, which has so far been conducted across 234,000 slum houses from door-to-door numbering. Now, that door-to-door numbering has been widely appreciated by everybody who knows of our study, including the governmental organizations. Then there is the Pearls project. As I mentioned before, that this is for the children. So it screens them for eye anomalies, refractive errors and everything. And children living in the slums of Mumbai, again, who don't have easy access to such healthcare. Now, there is an on-age study which is also underway where Aditya Jyot is an active participant, which is used so as to evaluate the diagnostic accuracy of various strategies for screening of diabetes and pre-diabetes. It is being conducted across 20 cities and 20 sites in India. Now, diabetic retinopathy screening and blood investigations of participants above the age of 40 is done. Now, the total number which has been done by us so far is around 1,300 in one particular area of Mumbai and the other one around 1,800 in the other particular area. And patients with any sort of complications who require further interventions are referred to the Aditya Jyot Eye Hospital. Now, the Aditya Jyot Research Center, which is located in an area called as Chunabhatti, which is properly like the staff and with proper equipments and everything. Our areas of research are like undertaking are like for the diabetic retinopathy, inherited eye diseases, age-related macular degenerations, and the objectives are to understand the disease mechanisms, to discover therapeutics, and translate the research to better therapies for human eye conditions. Now, this is our research lab, which is located at an area called as Chunabhatti in Mumbai. Now, we are like in the process of also developing a reading center where we can have develop an algorithm for teleophthalmology and telemedicine, which are like solutions for inaccessible areas. And high quality grading can be done at a single place, and the outcome of that particular grading and accordingly the treatments can be decided for patients who are situated at remote places where it's difficult for the patients to travel as well as the doctors to travel at that particular area. Now, management services to achieve systematic and comprehensive reading of ocular images is being done at that particular center. A centralized reading center would help the researchers, and that is what is our goal right now, and it is already actively underway, and we hope to get there in like the near future. Now, we also hold a Guinness record for maximum diabetic retinopathy screenings, which have been done in 8 hours duration, which was conducted in the slums of Dharavi in Mumbai. And the number which was achieved was around 650 people, to be 649 to be precise. And then again, this was recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records, and one more achievement of Aditya Jyot Foundation that we are very proud of. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Murthy. Dr. Murthy, in addition to being an excellent phacosurgeon, has also been a very patient trainer. He is extremely good with budding ophthalmologists, training them in cataract surgery. Thanks, Dr. Murthy. Now, I would like to call upon Dr. Astha Jain, consultant vitreoretina surgeon with the Aditya Jyot Foundation. Dr. Astha is a young, dynamic VR surgeon who has been driving many of our diabetic retinopathy projects. And I will request her to give an overview of the Dr. A.P.J. Abdul Kalam oration. Over to you, Astha.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the oration program. I would like request Aishwarya to share the screen, please.
Yes, ma'am, just on it. Is my screen visible?
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, Aishwarya. So I'll be talking about briefly about Dr. A.P.J. Abdul Kalam oration. And to begin with, the foundation, as Dr. Murthy said, was established on 30th of June 2005 with the desire to give back to the society, as was desired by Dr. A.P.J. Abdul Kalam. So the naming of the foundation was done by Dr. A.P.J. Abdul Kalam, who said that he aims to put a twinkle in the eyes of those who are visually impaired, and hence the name came as Aditya Jyot Foundation for Twinkling Little Eyes. Dr. Kalam was the one who inaugurated our one of its kind mobile ophthalmic van, which, as Dr. Murthy just said, that has all the equipments to screen as well as treat diabetic retinopathy. It's equipped with a slit lamp. It's equipped with a fundus fluorescent angiography for the lasers, and we take these mobile vans in the society so that we can treat it then and there. So this Dr. A.P.J. Abdul Kalam oration, next slide, Aishwarya, please. So this endowment recognizes individuals who have made exemplary contributions in any field of science or education that contributes to improvement in healthcare, public health, or have worked for the overall benefit of mankind. So next slide, please. So we had the 3 previous recipients of this oration. So the first oration was conducted in 2016, where the oration was awarded to Dr. Takeshi Iwata, who is the division director NISO from Japan and who has done a lot of work on AFD. And the next recipient in 2017 was Dr. Professor Pangchui Pui Calvin, who is the director of CUHK Ophthalmic Research Center in Hong Kong. And the next recipient was Professor Paul Baird, who is the head of ocular genetics at the Center of Eye Research, Australia. So this was awarded in 2018. And the current recipient for the year 2020 is none other than Dr. Michael F. Chiang, about whom Dr. Natarajan will be talking about shortly. So thank you very much all, and welcome to the oration once again.
Thank you, Astha. I also take this opportunity to congratulate Astha for the book that is just completed and getting published, Cutting Edge Vitreoretinal Surgery. Congratulations, Astha, wonderful work.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. All with Nataraja's guidance and encouragement, ma'am.
Wonderful, wonderful. Next, I would like to call upon our chairperson, Mr. G. Anantaraman. Mr. Anantaraman has been one of the founding trustees of our trust, along with Dr. Natarajan, a person with the background of the IRS. He comes with an extremely high sense of compliance, integrity, and He has modeled our foundation and all our policies along those lines. But he has a very soft heart, and he has been extremely supportive and has been supporting all the philanthropic activities of the foundation. I call upon our chairperson to say a few words.
Hello. Good morning and good evening to all of you. It's my privilege to be addressing in this fourth Aditya Jyot Dr. Abdul Kalam Public Endowment Oration Come Award. The program is to commemorate the memory of our former President, Dr. Abdul Kalam, who evinced a personal and keen interest in the eye care activities of Aditya Jyot, which he happened to visit. And as is wont, as a scientist, with a scientific temper and inquisitive frame of mind, he firmly believed in invention and innovation and had an all-consuming passion to ignite the quest in pushing the frontiers of science, including eye research, to newer areas to eradicate blindness as a major scourge of civilization. And Aditya Jyot was very much inspired by his approach, by his mission, and by his participation. Accordingly, he continues to be our inspirator even today, while his dreams sets the standards, dominates our purpose and activities, and vivify our continued foray into newer areas with not only in diagnostics, but also for providing affordable relief to the less and underprivileged of society so that we are able to provide eye care at affordable rates. I am proud to say that Aditya Jyot Foundation, since its inception in 2005, when Dr. Natarajan was starting it and I joined him a few days later, has for its vision and mission total eye care to the needy and poor, with its foot soldiers, highly committed, highly charged, working and operating in slums and backward areas of Mumbai and neighboring states with a rare zeal and commitment. Though the present times, due to pandemic, are dauntingly challenging, the indomitable spirit to weather the crisis and forge ahead continues to energize this team, the activities of the foundation, and I am sure that its activities would continue to grow unhindered and unwithered, being informed and guided by its research activities in concert with like-minded associations and bodies all over the globe to define the contours of the future. I am happy to participate today. As I said, today we have the august presence of Dr. Michael Chiang, who is a practicing ophthalmologist and who has been chosen as director of National Institute of Health's National Eye Care Washington, and he has got a string of professional achievements to his credit. And the topic of today's endowment oration is how artificial intelligence is changing the future of retinopathy of what you call prematurity care, that is child born prematurely born, a subject that holds a huge promise and potential in correcting the congenital defects of a prematurely born child and promising a great future for those children with good vision. We have great pleasure in inviting Dr. Michael Chiang as a speaker of eminence for today's evening function, and also have great pleasure in honoring him with the Oration Award. I welcome once again, and I wish the function all success. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Those were very inspiring words. Thank you. This Oration Award is a one of its kind award that our foundation gives every year. And this is something that we all look forward to with a great deal of excitement. And we are very proud to have Dr. Michael Chiang here with us this year, though on a virtual platform. I would now like to call upon our Managing Trustee, Dr. S. Natarajan, to do the official introduction of Dr. Michael Chiang. Over to you, Dr. Natarajan.
Thank you, Dr. Radhika, and thanks to the entire group. And I have a great opportunity to welcome Michael Chiang again. I think I'll share my screen. You can see my screen?
Yes, we can. We can.
Thank you, Dr. Radhika. And it's a great pleasure to welcome Michael Chiang, but from KSI Institute, now moving into National Eye Institute. He's already moved geography from Oregon to Washington, Maryland. So we call him Mike. Thank you, Mike, for coming and giving us the oration. And thanks. It was nice to hear from you that you are eager to come to India and work with us. So I take this opportunity that one day you and Jayashree will be with us. So I wanted to say that the current position is Professor of Ophthalmology, School of Medicine, Professor of Medical Informatics and Clinical Epidemiology, School of Medicine, Edwin and Josephine Knowles Professor, Biomedical Informatics, Graduate Program, School of Medicine, KSI Institute, School of Medicine. And BS in 1991 from Stanford University, MD in 1996 from Harvard Medical School and Harvard MIT Division of Health Sciences and Technology, residency, Johns Hopkins Wilmer Eye Institute, Baltimore, 2000, and fellowship, pediatric ophthalmology and adult strabismus, Johns Hopkins Wilmer Eye Institute, Baltimore, 2001. And he has certifications in Diplomat, American Board of Ophthalmology, Diplomat Clinical Informatics, American Board of Preventive Medicine. I have not heard of, at least I don't know anybody else except Mike who has this. And ophthalmology, pediatric, and pediatric ophthalmology, special focus on eye alignment strabismus, ophthalmology, and pediatric ophthalmology. And all of us know his contribution, and he's continued to work in retinopathy of prematurity. And his services to Oregon Health and Science University for the last 10 years. And if you see in the Facebook, people keep telling that they are going to miss him, but I think they're all looking forward for his leadership as a National Eye Institute. He is the Associate Director, OHSU KSI Institute, Director, OHSU NIH K-12 Mentored Clinician Scientist Training Program with Co-Director Dr. John Morrison. He manages a 1 million training program for clinician scientists in vision research. I hope all of us will take advantage of that, and I don't mind again becoming a student to him. And Director, OHSU NIH T32 Translational Vision Science Training Program with Co-Director Dr. Kate Keller. He manages another 1 million dollar training program for PhD students and postdoctoral fellows in vision research, and Knowles Professor of Ophthalmology and Medical Informatics and Clinical Epidemiology. And he was the Chair, Artificial Intelligence Task Force at the American Academy of Ophthalmology, at large member, Board of Trustees, member, Telemedicine Task Force and Committee, Chair, Data Analytics and Research Task Force and Committee, member, IRIS Registry Executive Committee, Chair, Medical Information Technology Committee. And he's the editorial member of Ophthalmology, Academic Journal of the AAO, and then Associate Editor, Journal of the American Medical Informatics Association, Academic Journal of the AMIA. As part of this position, he manages the JAMIA Student Editorial Board and help coordinate the collaborative JAMIA AMIA Journal Club. Columbia University Wagler's College of Physicians and Surgeons, and S. Cohen, Associate Professor of Ophthalmology and Biomedical Informatics. That was the course director, G4001, Introduction to Biomedical Informatics, Director 2007 to 10, our co-director 2005 to 7 with Dr. Ted Shortlive of the introductory course, and Director of Medical Student Education in Ophthalmology, and he was a Herbert Irving Assistant Professor in Ophthalmology and Biomedical Informatics, and Assistant Professor of Ophthalmology and Biomedical Informatics. And I think this is the one of the most important slides for all the budding doctors and ophthalmologists and researchers. It's mind-boggling to see 6,544 citations with 37 H index. And I think you can see the graph from 1985 to 2020. And I think amazing. And I think salute to you, Mike, for your group have published 200 peer-reviewed publications with about 247. That's what we could find. And these are the selected list of publications. I know I'm giving an elaborate introduction. The reason is you don't need, but I thought people should know who are online, and maybe in post they'll be watching in YouTube and in the Facebook one day, to be inspiring the young people that how at a young age you can achieve things and contribute to science as well as to the public at large and to the whole world. Thank you, Mike, for joining us here. And I will now I'll now may I read the citation, and then I'll just show you. So I'm just going to read the citation. The citation scroll, which we have it. We are actually, thanks for your address. We will be querying it shortly. Aditya Jyot Research in Vision and Ophthalmology, the Research and Development Unit of Aditya Jyot Foundation for Twinkling Little Eyes, presents this scroll of honor to Dr. Michael F. Chiang, Associate Director, OHSU KCI Institute, Knowles Professor of Ophthalmology. The fourth Aditya Jyot, Dr. A.P.J. Abdul Kalam Public Endowment Oration Award is being conferred on Dr. Michael Chiang for his outstanding contribution in ophthalmic research on Thursday, October the 22nd, 2020. And Dr. Michael F. Chiang, Professor of Ophthalmology and Medical Informatics and Clinical Epidemiology, and Associate Director of KCI Institute at the Oregon Health and Science University, a clinician scientist who conducts research in the application of biomedical informatics to clinical ophthalmology. As a clinical practitioner being focused on pediatric ophthalmology and adult strabismus, his research work involves telemedicine for diagnosis of retinopathy of prematurity and other ophthalmic diseases, implementation and evaluation of electronic health record, modeling of clinical workflow, and computer-based image analysis for clinical diagnosis. After completion of his BS in Electrical Engineering and Biology from Stanford University in 1991, he earned an MD from Harvard Medical School and Harvard MIT Division of Health Sciences and Technology in 1996. He also received an MA in Biomedical Informatics from Columbia University, where he was a National Library of Medicine Fellow. He's board certified in ophthalmology and clinical informatics and an elected fellow of the American College of Medical Informatics. Over 200 peer-reviewed papers are published by his group. Numerous clinical research and teaching awards have been conferred on him. Dr. Chiang received breakthrough status from the US Food and Drug Administration for his development in an assistive artificial intelligence system for ROP. And his work in biomedical informatics and telehealth research are particularly important for the future of vision research. Dr. Chiang has been appointed as Director of NIH National Eye Institute. He is expected to begin his new role as an NEI Director in late 2020. And Dr. Chiang brings extensive experience as a clinician, researcher, and educator to NIH. He co-directs an NIH-funded T32 training program in visual science for graduate students and fellows, as well as an NIH-funded K-12 clinician scientist program at OHSU. The Aditya Jyot Foundation for Twinkling Little Eyes is proud to present the fourth Aditya Jyot Dr. A.P.J. Abdul Kalam Public Endowment Oration Award, signed by Chairman Aditya Jyot Foundation for Twinkling Little Eyes, Mr. G. Anantharaman, and myself as Managing Trustee. So it's a great honor, and we have the scroll, which Dr. Aditya, you have the scroll.
Yeah, can you just,
I'll stop there. You're showing? Yeah. And this is the scroll, and we didn't know. We actually wanted somebody to come and give you in Maryland, but when I heard that you're shifting house and then you're shifting from one place to another within Maryland, then I decided we'll allow you to peacefully shift. So we have the scroll, we have the plaque and we have the medal here. All are ready, which is there in my clinic now, which will be couriered to you on day after tomorrow, because tomorrow I'm having a prayer for my grandmother, so I'm not going to the hospital. So I'm going to send it to you on Saturday. And also we have an Indian way, probably Jayeshi will explain to you later, a thing called shawl, which is made of silk, which will, I hope, I don't know whether Jayeshi can fly to Boston and do it on our behalf. And with this, I welcome you, Mike, to start your sharing stream. And I really, from the bottom of my heart and from everybody from the foundation, because our foundation, they are not working only for salary, because we don't have any other extra income in the front. But I think I'm grateful to every individual. We are hiring about 30 community health workers. So apart from the dedicating to the public, and I dedicate to my community health workers who are tirelessly working. They may not speak English when you come, but I think they are doing the greatest service. And I think whatever they are doing, and probably taking the credit through as a managing trustee. And with this, to you, Mike, all yours.
Natarajan, and really thank you so much for the invitation to come here and speak. I would just echo that. I mean, your introduction was far too gracious. And I would just echo that it would be so much nicer to do this in person. You know, one thing that I'll be talking about is Jayeshi Kalpathy Kramer. I'm really love that she's here, and we'll talk more about her. And you know, she's done so much. Well, she's very invested in India, and we've always talked about coming to India together and working on some projects. And my wife's closest friend in Oregon was born and raised in India. And we've always talked about having our families come together. And now this pandemic has gotten in the way of everything. But you know, when everything settles out, love to be able to do that. But it is it's a real privilege for me to be able to give this oration. And as I learned about the activities of the Aditya Jyot Foundation, I was really impressed. And just, I know that we've had an introduction about this, but what I sort of know about Dr. Abdul Kalam is that I always thought of him as a rocket scientist. But I really never knew that there was this side. And I really love the quote, putting a twinkle in the eyes of the visually impaired. And, you know, of course, I really believe in this mission that what we do is that we want to do our work to try to make this a world a better place. And I think the programs at the foundation in things like medical research and, you know, research and innovation are you know, really wonderful. You know, so impressed to learn about that, and you know, about this concept of touching the lives of 8 million people and getting into the Guinness Book of World Records for some of those activities. And so from that perspective, it's a real privilege for me to be able to speak on behalf of this. As Dr. Natarajan mentioned, I will be talking about artificial intelligence and the impact on retinopathy of prematurity. And on this slide, I put up the fact that I'll be presenting work that was really done by a lot of different people. And I want to highlight a couple people here. One of them is Pete Campbell, who's a junior vitreoretinal surgeon at Oregon, who is superb. He's done a lot of work in this area. He's going to be you know, really inheriting a lot of this research program as I transition into my new position. And you know, the other is Jayeshi Kalpathy Kramer, who I'm really you know, honored is here, you know, today and joining. And you know, she's one of my closest collaborators, and you know, runs a group at Harvard Medical School where she's become a real superstar. And you know, more about that coming up. And you know, the other two are Susan Osmo in Oregon and Paul Chan, who some of you know. He's the chair of ophthalmology at University of Illinois and has a lot of connections internationally and you know, in India. So I'll be presenting work that really a lot of people you know, contributed to. So I want to, Dr. Natarajan mentioned that this is a diverse audience, some medical people, some lay people. We've been talking about this disease, retinopathy of prematurity, and I wanted to start with this slide. What is happening? So a full-term baby is born at 40 weeks. And now you get premature babies, born at 28 weeks, 24 weeks instead of 40 weeks. And, the retina lines the back of the eye, and it's really what helps us see. And the blood vessels grow in the retina, and they should be fully grown by about 40 weeks. But when you get babies born prematurely, the vessels are not fully grown yet. Okay? And as they develop, normally what should happen is that they should just grow, and then fully finish growing by about 40 weeks full term. But in babies with prematurity, what often happens is that they start to grow irregularly, and that's what's represented here. That's what's called retinopathy of prematurity. And when this happens, it can detach the retina, cause it to come off, and that's what causes babies to go blind. Okay, so unfortunately, very, very common problem. And this slide actually Jayshree prepared. How much of a problem is this? So we've got 115 million babies born per year, of whom about 15 million are premature, of whom about 200,000 per year end up developing ROP, and roughly 32,000 cases of blindness or visual impairment per year. Okay, so this is really the leading cause of preventable childhood blindness in the United States and also worldwide. And the good and the unfortunate thing is that almost all the cases of blindness are preventable if they're diagnosed early and treated appropriately. Okay, but there are huge challenges to that. And why is this important in India? Well, in India, there are more premature babies born than anywhere else in the world. Okay? And the other thing is that because of advances in neonatology, more and more babies are surviving who are premature, and therefore they're at risk for getting ROP. So this is a huge problem, and it's a growing problem. The other thing is that because this disease is relatively new, in a lot of parts of the world, this disease didn't exist until relatively recently because premature babies didn't survive. And one of the challenges is that the number of pediatric ophthalmologists and retina specialists and neonatologists who are experienced in ROP is still relatively low. So big problem. And so I would say that one of our challenges, of course, is training ophthalmologists to just do these eye exams and training neonatologists to manage these babies. But there's a growing role for innovative technologies. Things like telehealth, teleeducation, artificial intelligence. And there's been some beautiful work in India in this area. I know that the Aditya Jyot Foundation has done some really nice work in this area. And this slide is from Anand Vinakar in Bangalore. And one of my friends, Parag Shah, has done some really nice work at Aravind Eye Hospital as well in this area. Okay, so a lot of room for innovation. So the way that we diagnose ROP is that we do eye exams. Okay, you get a ophthalmoscope, you look in the baby's retina, and you describe what you saw. In the US, we started seeing ROP around basically 1950. And between 1950 and the 1980s, ROP examination was completely descriptive. Okay, you basically examine the retina and you use words and pictures. Okay, here's a typical drawing to represent what you saw. Okay, so very qualitative. Now that changed in the 1980s with what's called the International Classification of ROP, okay, the ICROP. And what ICROP did in 1984 is that it created an international standard for representing exam findings. And so the idea is that everybody in the world, when they look at that retina, they use the same terms to describe what they saw. Okay, and those terms happen to be things like zone, stage, clock hour extent, and plus disease. But when everybody in the world uses the same terminology to classify things, there are huge benefits for clinical care and also clinical research. Okay, you cannot do research unless everybody speaks the same language. Okay, this was an enormous benefit. And we're right now undergoing a revision of ICROP. Okay, this happens every 15 to 20 years that we revise the classification system. And yeah, I'm actually privileged to be chairing that group. But there are two people in that group. It's about 30 so-called world experts in ROP, and two of them are from India, and it's basically Parag Shah and Anand Vinakar. Okay, so there's a lot of representation from India in this group. Okay, but when we do ROP, so because we've got this classification, we can do clinical trials. And from these clinical trials, we know that of all these different parameters, plus disease is by far the most important one to know when you've got a baby who's at risk for going blind and who needs to be treated. Okay, so very, very well established. And what's plus disease? It means that the blood vessels in the retina are dilated and tortuous. Okay, so they're dilated here, meaning thick, and tortuous, wiggly. Okay. And so if you've got plus disease, the baby's at risk for going blind, needs to be treated. Okay, if not, you can almost always safely observe that baby. So we've got to diagnose plus disease accurately. So one of the challenges here is that we're not very good at diagnosing plus disease accurately. Okay, these terms like tortuosity and dilation are very, very subjective in many ways. And in 2007, we did what I thought was a very, very simple research study. And we took a series of standard photographs, put them up on the web, and we invited 21 world experts to go to that website and classify, is it plus or is it normal? And there's actually an intermediate pre-plus category. So you've got plus, pre-plus, or normal. And here's an example where in this retina, there's a little bit of dilation, a little bit of tortuosity, and 15% of experts called this plus, 85% called it not plus. In this image on the right, this one split 50-50, half called it plus, half called it not plus. And we saw a lot of images that split 50-50, 60-40. And so this is a very big problem when even the world experts themselves look at the exact same thing and then half call it one thing, half call it the opposite. And this is what determines whether a baby needs to be treated. Okay, so we've got to do a better job at disagreement in diagnosis. Now, one thing we got interested in is also disagreement in the diagnostic process. Okay, now, I think these things are really important, not only for ROP, but I would argue for all of ophthalmology and all of medicine in general. Okay, doctors look at the same thing, they come up with different diagnoses. And the process is one thing that I think is interesting. I started to think about this 7 or 8 years ago when I was on a panel for ROP, and one of the panelists used the analogy that in the US, we've got a Supreme Court. And one of the Supreme Court justices in the US in the 1960s, they were arguing a case about pornography. And the Supreme Court justice said, well, I can't define pornography, but I know it when I see it because it just looks bad. Okay. And so the panelists in ROP said, well, that's what plus disease is like. It just looks bad when you see it. And so it's hard to define, but you just recognize it when you see it. And that comment bothered me for months. Okay, and I thought about that because I thought, well, if we want to be scientific about things, how can we just say that things just look bad? Okay. But on the other hand, every clinician knows, and it's not just ROP, it's really every field of medicine, that sometimes things just don't look right. And in ophthalmology, we'll say, well, this retina looks angry. It looks aggressive, and it just looks bad. And in general medicine, physicians will say, well, I don't like the way this patient looks. They just look sick. Okay? And that clinical judgment is a real phenomenon, but we're often not very good at articulating it. And so we got interested in this question. Could variability in the diagnostic process explain some of the diagnostic variability that we're seeing? In other words, if different people have different concepts of what it means to just look bad. And so we worked with Nina Hewing, who was a visiting fellow from Germany. And we designed up a study where we'd capture and encode the detailed qualitative thoughts of who we thought were the 7 most seasoned ROP experts in the world. Okay, they were people who came up with this original international classification system, who defined plus disease originally. And we basically came up with standardized images and questions. And we asked them to explain their thought process as they were diagnosing the eyes. And they used pens to annotate the drawings, what makes you worried or what makes you reassured about those retinas. And we videotaped them and went through hours of videotape transcript to try to, and we got a cognitive psychologist to analyze, to model their thought process as they did this. Okay. And so here's just one example, that there's one retina here, expert number 1 diagnosed plus, expert number 2 diagnosed pre-plus, expert number 3 diagnosed normal, okay, exact same retina. And they're all looking at different parts of the retina when they made those diagnoses. Okay, and so one thing we took away from this is that there is a difference in overall diagnosis as well as diagnostic process. Okay, and I think that every clinician probably wouldn't be surprised by this, that different experts pay attention to different things when they make their diagnosis. So when you look at different experts looking at problems, I think a lot of interesting things come up. Okay, now Pete and Jay Cherie did some very, very beautiful work in this area. And let me take you through this diagram. So this is 8 experts. Okay, these are world experts in ROP. And they happen to be looking at 100 different images. And if that expert diagnosed that image as plus, in other words, bad, it's red. Okay. If that expert diagnosed pre-plus, that box is yellow. And if that expert diagnosed normal for that image, it's green. Okay. So the first thing to notice here is that experts 7 and 8 down here diagnosed plus disease in red 6 times more often than expert number 1. Okay. And in fact, if you go to a different set of images, okay, this is a set of 34 images. Look at expert 7 and look at expert number 1. It's that same 6-to-1 ratio. Okay, so in medicine, we say that there are overcallers. In other words, doctors who are more aggressive, and that's like 7 and 8. And we've got undercallers, okay, doctors who are more conservative, number 1. And we all know that's a real phenomenon, that if you go to surgeon number 1, sometimes they will always recommend surgery. And surgeon number 2 will always recommend observation. And, but this is what it looks like on a screen here. Okay, so overcallers and undercallers. And the other thing is that if you look at each image, and if you go down these columns, we can calculate a score for each image. So let's say you give that image 1 point if somebody diagnosed normal, 2 points if someone diagnosed pre-plus, 3 points if someone diagnosed plus. You average that all out here. That's what this row means here, average. Now here, what we've done is converted it to a color. So there are some images that are very, very green because everybody diagnosed normal. Okay, and there are some images on this end that are very, very red because everybody diagnosed plus. But in the middle, there's every color in between. Okay, you've got sort of red, you've got orange, orange, yellow, yellow. And so the point from this is that the real world is a continuous spectrum. And I think this is probably true in every single disease, that there are some people down here who are very, very healthy, and there are some people here who are very, very not healthy, really for every disease. And there's every spectrum in between here. Okay. And so the insight that I got from this, and again, this was, really Jay Cherie and Pete who came up with this concept and put it together. And the thing that I took away from it is that when we do evidence-based medicine, okay, what we do is we classify people as normal, mild, moderate, or severe. And based on that, we do studies. Patients don't come in buckets of normal, mild, moderate, and severe. They come as a spectrum everywhere in between. And what we have to do is classify people. And we're not very good at classifying people. Some people draw the lines here. Some people draw the lines here. This is where we need help from artificial intelligence. And the other thing is that by comparing, what we've got good data for, but I haven't shown here, that if you ask ophthalmologists to look at 2 images and compare what's worse, retina number 1 or retina number 2, we're actually very consistent at doing that. Okay, so relative severity is much, much easier than absolute severity drawing the lines. And there are some analogies here to artificial intelligence and moving from qualitative to quantitative that I'll get into here. Okay, but so the take home from this is that there's a continuous spectrum of disease, and this is one of the reasons artificial intelligence can really help. Okay, now some milestones about artificial intelligence that I think are really interesting to think about are that in 1997, IBM, okay, so computers developed a system, Deep Blue, and this system played chess, and it was shown that it could beat the best chess players in the world. Okay, and the way that these algorithms worked were that they were essentially brute force algorithms. Okay, they could, in a way, program up all the different possible configurations, and these systems can compute faster, okay, than the best human chess players. Now, in 2011, IBM also developed a system, Watson. Okay, now the point of this is that it played Jeopardy. Okay, and Jeopardy is a television show in the US. It's basically trivia, any types of question about any category. And, Jeopardy was able to beat the best US Jeopardy champions in answering questions. Okay, so big milestone. What's a little bit less known is that in 2017, there's an Asian board game called Go. Okay, and the way that Go works is that as you move into the game, the number of possible board configurations actually increases exponentially. And so you can't very easily program up a system that looks at all the different possibilities right now. And so there's a group at DeepMind. It's a basically think tank in the UK that came up with this AlphaGo project. And they used technology, deep learning, to basically model this system on human experts, Go players, and came up with systems that beat the best Korean Go player in the world, the best Go player in Korea. Okay, and after that, what happened I thought was interesting is that in China, the people said, well, you can beat the best Korean, you can't beat the best Chinese Go player. Okay, but then of course, what happened is that they played the best Go player in China, they beat them. Okay. And then what I thought was interesting is that they moved on to a project called AlphaGo Zero. And the idea with this is that they used a technology called reinforcement learning, and basically had two computer systems. They taught each system the rules of the game, okay? But they did not program them with human experts. In other words, there was no human input on what did the best Go players do in certain situations. But just by knowing the rules, these two systems played each other, and they gradually learned. They essentially taught themselves strategy by playing each other, and then within months, the system was able to beat some of the best Go players in the world. Okay, and so I thought that was a really amazing and in many ways very scary kind of concept that these systems can teach themselves and end up being unbiased by what do experts think. They could learn new rules that people wouldn't necessarily think about. And I hope that's something that we can take advantage of to be able to treat patients better in the future. And so we've got our team of artificial intelligence. And for ROP, we've gotten interested in, well, can we do a better job at diagnosing disease? So we've talked about Jay Cherie, who's at Harvard, and Stratas Ioannidis and Dennis Erdogmas are at Northeastern University in Boston. Okay, they run an artificial intelligence team there. And several other people that we've talked about. There's Pete and there's Paul over here. And it's a really amazing group to work with. Okay, multiple PhD students, postdoctoral fellows. And I just want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've done involving deep learning. So artificial intelligence used to be about things like feature extraction. And it was Jay Cherie who said, well, Mike, you should think about deep learning. It's going to be one of the next big things. And it really has become one of the next big things. So this is work that James Brown, who was one of Jayeshwari's postdocs at Massachusetts General Hospital, and Pete Campbell did a couple of years ago. And basically what we've done is that we've trained deep learning systems to, number one, segment images. In other words, you've got a retinal image. Where are the blood vessels in that image? Okay, so we can segment that image using deep learning. And then based on that segmented image, we can classify that image into a so-called feature space. And from that classification, what's the probability that that retina is plus disease versus pre-plus versus normal? Okay, so we can train systems to do that. Now, one of the challenges is that if all the experts in the world have different diagnoses in terms of is something plus, pre-plus, or normal, how do you train these systems and how do you evaluate them? We spent years coming up with so-called reference standard diagnoses for thousands of images. And how do you come up with a reference standard diagnosis? Well, what we've done is that every baby gets a real eye exam from an ophthalmologist. Okay, so they'll record their findings, and then we take pictures on the same day, and we get multiple ophthalmologists, experts, to look at each of those images. And so we take all those expert gradings, and we take the actual eye exam and harmonize them into an overall reference standard diagnosis. Okay, so it's not perfect, but we feel like it's the best that we can do to come up with, well, what was the right answer on that day? So based on that, we can train these systems to make the best diagnosis. And the way that these are evaluated is using the area under the receiver operating characteristic curve, and it's a number from 0.5 to 1. And our area under the curve is 0.98 for identifying plus disease, so almost perfect discrimination. And when we test the performance of the system against experts in an independent data set of images, our system was 91% accurate for classifying is it plus, pre-plus, or normal. And when we got 8 world experts, those experts were 82% accurate. Okay, so the system actually beat all the world experts except for one. And so I think that this is pretty compelling. And Jayeshwari, Pete, Susan, and I, took a trip to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration about a year ago, and we did receive, as Dr. Natarajan mentioned, breakthrough status for this system, and we've gotten interested in trying to get this into the real world to use. But it'll be a process. But it's been very exciting work. Now, one of the things that we've gotten interested in is we've alluded to this idea of moving from, we started in the 1950s with a purely qualitative system that's descriptive. And how can we move toward more of a quantitative system? Well, one of the things that we've done is, Jayeshwari, Pete, and Sangjin Kim, who was a visiting scholar with us from Korea several years ago, have done some really nice work in this area of, can you take the output of that deep learning system, that artificial intelligence system, and convert it to a number from 1 to 9, okay, where 1 is really, really normal, 9 is really, really abnormal. And it's along the lines of that continuous spectrum of abnormality that we talked about before. And why would we want to do that? Well, as clinicians, we're often interested in, is my baby getting better, worse, or the same as before? And if you can put that on a 1 to 9 scale, it's much, much easier to figure that out than if you say plus, pre-plus, or normal. Okay, so there are really big clinical benefits of that. The other thing is that experimentally, we've talked about the fact that you get better agreement from comparisons. Okay, what's worse, number 1 or number 2? And by comparing from 1 to 9, in principle, we could pretty easily scale where does my baby belong from a 1 to 9 scale. So there are big, big benefits of being able to do this. And so I just want to present some work that we've done in this area. One of the potential applications of this is screening. Like if we had a 1 to 9 scale that we deployed. And Travis Redd was one of our residents in Oregon, and now one of the early faculty members there. And he published what I thought was a nice paper in this, where he looked at almost 5,000 images, calculated that artificial intelligence derived scale from 1 to 9, and basically said, well, what if we were implementing a screening program where if this number was above 3, 4, 5, that we referred those patients. Well, it turns out that that system would actually have very high sensitivity and relatively good specificity for identifying babies who needed treatment. Okay, so maybe if we were working in some resource poor setting, we could basically take pictures, run this system, and then refer the babies who were most at risk for needing care. Okay, so that's a potential application. Another interesting application was disease progression. Stan Taylor was one of our retina fellows in Oregon a year ago, and did an interesting study where he looked at over 5,000 retinal images, again, calculated this vascular severity score. And the way that this diagram works is that the x-axis is time of the eye exam. Okay. So this is when the first eye exam is done, okay, at 30 to 32 weeks post-menstrual age. And the y-axis here is that quantitative scale from 1 to 9. Okay, now there's two populations of babies. One is in white, the babies who never needed treatment. Okay, that's the vast majority of the babies. They never needed treatment, but they needed eye exams every week or two. The blue here is the babies who eventually develop treatment requiring disease. Okay, now, when do they get treatment requiring disease? Here, okay, on the last set of exams. And so they're getting examined, and some of these babies get gradually worse. Now, the thing to take away from this is that the babies who got treated, of course, had higher 1 to 9 numbers, quantitative AI scores, than the babies who didn't need treatment. And so, but the interesting thing is that the population who eventually needed treatment, very early on in their disease course, they started to get higher quantitative scores. And so in a way, can we use these quantitative scales to predict who's at risk for eventually needing treatment? And if we can predict that, we could watch them more closely. Maybe we can refer them to areas that have capability of treating them. And so maybe artificial intelligence can help us with prognosis as well as with diagnosis. And I thought that was something that was interesting. And the last example I want to give is that Kishan Gupta was one of our residents in Oregon last year as well, and did some nice work in this. Kishan's background was that he was actually a PhD in neuroscience and was an engineer by background also, very sharp with these things. And he looked at disease regression. Okay, so let me take you through this diagram. So these are all babies who were treated with laser. Okay. And this is the quantitative vascular score from 1 to 9 that we get from artificial intelligence. And 0 here on the x-axis is when the baby was treated. Okay, so this is before treatment and this is after treatment. And so what we're seeing here is that the quantitative score before treatment initially was relatively low, but these babies got gradually worse. Okay, it was like in the first slide. So they got worse, 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 worse. And at this point, the diagnosis of needing treatment was made. The baby was treated and then improved. Okay, so the orange here is babies who were treated once. They never required retreatment. Okay, so they got worse, got treated, and got better. The blue are babies who eventually required retreatment. In other words, the first laser didn't work. And so what happens here is that they got worse, 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 got treated here, and they initially improved, but then started to reactivate, and then were retreated again, improved. Okay. And so the thing that I took away from this is that these babies who required retreatment had higher quantitative scores at the time of initial treatment than the babies who didn't require retreatment. And so now we can't conclude too much from this, but the point that I took away from this is that maybe they were being treated too late, or maybe we really should be treating a little bit earlier because these were all plus disease, but these were a worse plus, if you will, than initially. And maybe work like Kishan's could help us in the future figure out, well, what's the best threshold for treatment? And are we not doing the right thing if were these cases just waiting a little bit too long because they flared up? Okay, so a lot of potential here for helping us learn things in the future of artificial intelligence. So I want to just finish up in one or two final slides. And a lot of people ask the question, are computers going to replace physicians someday with artificial intelligence? Well, I don't think so. As physicians, we do two things. We diagnose disease and we manage patients. And when we diagnose disease, I think that we've shown that for ROP, artificial intelligence is very promising. And I hope that this talk is really not just ROP, but everything that we said in this can apply to other diseases as well. And there's been work in diabetic retinopathy, macular degeneration, and but where's the data to make a diagnosis going to come from? You've got to know what tests to do, what questions to ask. You've got to have expertise to know that. And when we manage patients, what we're really talking about, for example, you've got a disease, and let's say that disease is cancer. Okay, make it broad, and it's a terminal cancer. Well, maybe management plan one would be to do chemotherapy and radiation therapy, very aggressive, and it would improve your prognosis, your life expectancy by 6 months on the average. And but you'd be very uncomfortable and suffering during those 6 months. Whereas management two would be you'd go into hospice and you could say goodbye to your friends and family more comfortable. Well, different people will choose option one or option two based on their individual calibration point. And maybe physicians, what we should be doing in any field of medicine is helping to guide patients through those choices. How do you do that? You've got to know your patients and communicate with them. And so I think that the goal of these systems is really at the end of the day to improve physician performance, not to replace physicians. And in fact, it's going to be really important to maintain those unique human skills to take advantage of how can we help work better with these artificial intelligence systems. And in fact, maybe someday clinicians who use artificial intelligence might replace clinicians who don't use artificial intelligence. And I think that's one interesting insight from all of this. So my last slide here is that I think we've talked about three things: science, art, and technology. And for ROP, and again, this could be said for any field of ophthalmology, any disease in ophthalmology. For science, it's things like classification and clinical trials. Okay, they've really revolutionized clinical care, but they're not perfect. Okay, we talked about the fact that many of these parameters are subjective and qualitative. Okay, we've talked about art, where even evidence-based practice and research cannot capture all of that qualitative nuance of disease. Okay, what it means to just look bad. Right? And that is a real phenomenon. Every clinician will tell you that. And we've talked about technology. Artificial intelligence, in this case, telehealth, can help us move from qualitative to quantitative. And I wanted to finish up with this message that I think that good clinical care requires all three: science, technology, and art. And that's one thing that I really took away from some of these messages from Dr. Abdul Kalam, that fusion of science, art, and technology. And that's one of the reasons that I think that the work of the Aditya Jyot Foundation is so nice, because I think that it does what we all really want to do: blend science, technology, and art. So thank you very much again for the privilege to come in here and speak.
Thank you, Mike, for a wonderful oration and a wonderful work you're doing. And we wish Godspeed in all your endeavors. And we have now. I just want to share a screen and have Dr. I have something to show. The Dr. J. I just made a quick slide. Thanks to Aishwarya for the. So you can see the slide, Dr. Dr. Radhika?
Yeah, we can.
So this is Dr. Jayashree Kalpathy Kramer. We are happy to have you here as a panelist when Dr. Amit Jain is going to chair. And I also request Mr. Anantharaman and our Vice Chairperson, Mr. Shamla Gopinath, with a banking background. If you have any questions, I think both will be happy to answer. And Dr. Jayashree, as Dr. Mike mentioned, is a researcher at Harvard Medical School, Associate Professor of Radiology, Mass General Hospital, Mass Boston, and September 2006 to 11, instructor at Oregon Health Science University, Portland, education Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, New York, 1989 to 93, and to 5 in PhD in electrical engineering, and in 1988 to 1989, the MS Electrical Engineering, and before that, Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, the P-Tech. And I think everybody has to know that Bombay has become Mumbai. So Amit, and I think I don't have any question because it's really wonderful, and I think you have a good background of everything. But I think I was thinking on the shoes of a person. I mean, today also we are going to have one of the ROP babies who has become a teenager now, whose record I have. So if Mr. Anantharaman or Shamla Madam has any questions, as you are a trustee for the Aditya Jyot Foundation, I'm happy our trustees have met Dr. Abdul Kalam several times. And even though he was the president of India with all the security and everything, but he was so nice, he was warm, and he always was there. Whenever I called him, and whenever he came to Mumbai because he was a friend, before he became president, he always visited. He'll ask me, what's the agenda? I said, no, you just come and meet my people who are working, come and encourage them. And as a president, he did that. And I think and that was really remarkable of him as a great human being. It's a great loss, but in India, we have this Guru Shishya, which Jayeshi will be telling. So he's one of my guru, apart from my mentor, Dr. Badrinath, who was the man who trained me. And then I have Elder John, who did a lot of grade 5 ROP surgeries in 90s. And I remember that time Tatsu say doing open sky, and I also did some, and I in between stopped. I said, no point in treating ROP because all were grade 5. It was terrible. And now I think we are happy where we can see babies and we are able to screen and we can make the babies live longer and then they see well. So Mr. Anantharaman sir and Mr. Shamla madam, you can start. And Amit, you have collected some questions?
Yeah,
yes, sir.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Dr. Chiang for a wonderful talk. And, some of it, I mean, I'm an anesthesiologist by profession. I'm not an ophthalmologist. So though I have dealt with a number of babies, this was an eye-opening talk for me. Thank you on a personal note too. And Dr. Amit Jain is our consultant retina surgeon. And I request Dr. Amit to start with the question and answer session.
Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Yeah, you can go ahead. Yeah.
Excellent talk, Dr. Michael. I have few audience questions, but before that, I'll jump to my question rather than putting the audience first. I wanted to ask you that whatever the AI work has been done right now in ROP, it has been done in India also, but then the computer software analysis, what CNN you had shown, is generated from a subset, which is the population of American population. So how does we take it into an Indian subset where like the pigmentation of the retina, the blood vessel size are different. So to grade a Indian ROP baby would be completely different. So we need to have some data of that also prior to. So.
Dr. Amit, that is a great question. And I think if I can rephrase your question, maybe broaden it a little bit, it's that one critical thing about these systems is that they need to be generalizable. In other words, they can't just work in one population, they've got to work in other populations. And what makes the baby in India different from the baby in the US could be a lot of different factors. One of them, you mentioned pigmentation, but there could be many other factors as well. And that's one thing that we've been really interested in. And in fact, so let me give a somewhat nuanced answer to that. One of them is that if you take, let's say, Jayeshwari's system was developed and tested in the American baby. If you take that and use it out of the box in an Indian population, which we've done before, through some collaborations, it works actually fairly well. It doesn't work as well as if you tested it in the US population. And one thing that we've gotten interested in is training that system on a separate population of Indian babies. And when you do that, when you take our system, train it in a population of Indian babies, and then test it on a population of Indian babies, it works best, it works well in both the US population and the American population. So I think one of the challenges is getting enough data to be able to test these systems and to train them and validate them really broadly. And I think this is a very important question. I'd probably stop there and ask Jayshree if you have other things to add, because I know this is something you've thought very deeply about.
I agree, it's a really good and really important question that we should all be thinking about, is validating the algorithms in the populations that they're going to be used. There's also things to think about in the design of the algorithm. So one of the things that we did in our algorithm is actually have a segmentation of the blood vessels being the first step. And that way, what we are actually looking at for the classification is just a segmented vessel map. And that reduces some of the differences between pigmentation, the camera systems, the illumination, and things like that as well. So you can potentially have a different segmentation algorithm for outlining the blood vessels for the different populations, but then have a similar classification step across populations. You had mentioned previously the dilation and tortuosity might be different as well in different populations. But again, having a segmentation map might help with some of the normalization process. So a really important question, but as Mike said, there are things we can do in terms of getting data and getting the algorithm to be fine-tuned for the different population, but we can also think about it throughout the design process of the algorithm.
So I'll take one audience question. Dr. Rajshri here has asked that traditionally, am I audible, right? So traditionally the AI deals with fundus photo. In few scenarios, it is dealing with OCT also. Have we started incorporating OCT angiography to help learn the deeper vessels, deeper vasculature of the retina and make decisions on the diagnosis?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question. And one person that I highlighted in these slides is Pete Campbell. And Pete has recently gotten a grant and is continuing to work with people like Jayshree. And there's also an engineer in Oregon, David Huang, who was one of the original inventors, if you will, of OCT, and he's done some very nice work in OCT angiography. And one of the goals of that is to build wide-angle imaging devices, OCT angiography, that do exactly that. And hopefully someday, one of us will be able to come back and talk about that at some point, what we're learning from that. But I do think that either as standalone devices or in combining OCT angiography together with fundus imaging, we'll be able to learn things that we couldn't really see before.
Okay, sir. Okay. Hopefully that answers Dr. Rajshri's question. There's another question about the role of if we are about to put a ROP telemedicine model in India or in some other rural places, how does AI helps in and what are the precautions we have to take while setting a telemedicine program?
That's a great question. I think that I'll answer this, and we'll be very curious what Jayshree's thoughts are, of course, because this is something that we've talked about at length. And number one is that artificial intelligence and telehealth, I think, clearly can go hand in hand. And maybe I'll answer one aspect of this, that the engineers sometimes talk about, this phrase, garbage in, garbage out, right? If you don't get good data, you can't do good analysis. And one of the challenges in telehealth is getting good images. And number one, there's a technical quality aspect of it. How can you just take a good photo? And the second is, how do you get a photo that really represents the pathology that you need to capture. And that means that you've got to have a well-trained technician. In other words, they've got to know what they're looking for to be able to capture that. And I think that's one thing of all the different aspects of training our photographers. That's one of the toughest ones, that you really have to teach them about the disease. Now, with the artificial intelligence part, there are a lot of questions about, well, what's the purpose of the AI? What are we trying to do? And I'll probably leave it for Jayshree to talk about those.
So great points, Mike. And I think the human aspect of AI implementation is something that should not be underestimated in order to get, as Mike said, get good quality images. Having a skilled trained workforce is very important. But the artificial intelligence can also help in getting better images, for instance. As everybody who has a smartphone knows, your cameras are getting very, very good at taking high quality pictures. They can do autofocus, they can do detection, making sure you're position the image correctly and so on. So something I suspect we'll see more of is the artificial intelligence also being embedded into the cameras that will make it so that you don't have to be an expert to take good photographs. These days, we all take good photographs, not because we have great photographers, because a camera does a lot of help for us. And so I think the same sort of advancements that we are seeing will also permeate into the camera systems. In terms of the use of AI, and especially in more remote areas and so on, one thing that you can do is make the algorithm so that you can change the threshold in such a way that you can be making sure you're not missing any important cases. So the threshold for a screening program can be quite different than a threshold for a diagnostic program, for instance. So you can triage it to make sure that most of the normals are don't need to be seen by a clinician, but if you can identify potential concerning cases, then again, you can reduce the workload and make the system work more efficiently.
Well said. I hope to look for the additions in the camera so that you can have a good screening. So I think I read the paper, one of the paper in 2017, I think, Mike, you mentioned that future you would reduce the cost by introducing smartphone for ROP. Is there anything happening in smartphone diagnosis now with the ROP?
One of the things that we've done, and really Pete Campbell is the one who's leading this. And Jayshree is very closely involved. Of course, I'm involved as well. Is working with portable imaging devices, and some of that work we have partners in India doing. And the idea is, number one, can we take a good enough image using a portable device like a smartphone device? And number two, can we incorporate these artificial intelligence systems into those smartphone devices to do, as Jayshree mentioned, either screening or diagnosis? And so I think very exciting work. Right now, the smartphone images, don't have the same field of view as these essentially RetCam images do, but maybe that's going to be improving. And one of the things we're interested in is, what field of view do you really need to make a diagnosis? And is the narrower field good enough?
Because we, myself, Asta and Radhika, worked on using the smartphone with a company called Remedio in India. They made the infrared device, and also a company called Medios in Singapore, and made the offline AI, which is good for India because this is for diabetic retinopathy, definitely not for ROP. But I think we had initially everybody was saying, oh, it's not easy to get a good picture. But now the people who are like 8th grade pass or fail, or school dropouts, we have trained, thanks to Dr. Radhika again, for a patient training. So she has trained them, and I think now we are trying to make that as a system for we have about 640,000 villages in India, and that's my dream, to reach all of them for at least for diabetic retinopathy. Similar thing, I hope one day it will happen for ROP. But even there, I think the problem is the people are not buying the idea because they think, oh, smartphone, how can we take? But I think we have proved with a 100% sensitivity in predicting the referral diabetic retinopathy, which is published in JAMA in August 2019. We are already again having a larger series now, and we wish we can use. And we don't have any financial with any company. I hope we can work with you on ROP and maybe in diabetic retinopathy too.
So can I take one last question? If we are already going ahead of our time. Dr. Vinay here has asked that do you consider any systemic factors which we are known to have associated with ROP progression worsening, say like anemia, thrombocytopenia, sepsis? So how does AI understand these mechanisms, which sometimes may change the disease course dramatically?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And again, I will start with that, and then we'll listen to what Jay has, because usually what she says is more insightful, than what I say. So I think that number one, with artificial intelligence, I really agree with the premise of that. What I think the question is, which is that if I walk up as a physician and look at a patient, you get a lot of things from just seeing your patient that don't necessarily get reflected by a fundus photograph. In fact, you could argue that when you write down things in a chart note, there are a lot of things from interacting with that patient that don't get reflected in the chart note either. And so and that goes along the lines of that art of medicine. And so number one, I really agree that I don't think it would be the right thing to just say that you can take a fundus photograph and assume that's all the information. Number two is that one of the things that we've gotten interested in doing, and Jayshree's done some beautiful work in this area, and we've got a PhD student that we work with together, Aaron Coiner, who's in Oregon, who's doing some very neat modeling work as well. But one of the ways that I see this going together is we do, in general, a reasonably good job of collecting those, Dr. Amit, what you're calling systemic factors. And one of the things that we've been trying to do is to build essentially risk models based on the image, based on how that image changes over time. Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? And also based on those systemic factors, can we build models to predict your risk? And hopefully what we'll see is that when we include more systemic data, these models predict better than, without putting everything together. But some of that, what I'm taking from the preliminary results are that it seems to work, but as far as the full results, we'll have to wait and see. But Jayshree, let me let you talk, because I know you have a lot to say about this.
No, I agree with everything you said. It's a good question, and definitely we have to look at more than just the image. So we can also develop techniques that, as Mike said, the risk models can build into it a variety of clinical factors. You can build in all of the known risk factors and actually learn which ones might be most relevant under what circumstances.
Yes, thank you, sir. So maybe a hopeful vitreoretina person practicing ROP, I think I'll let the CNN work to diagnose these babies, and then just follow prospectively to see who requires the treatment, and then again add some systemic factors to tell us in future that, okay, we see a grade 1 or 2 or 7, okay, the 7% will require treatment, so better be cautious about that number 7 grading person. Thanks a lot for all the discussion, and I think I'll hand it over back to Natarajan sir.
Radhika,
right? Thank you. Thanks a lot, Amit. I hope you were able to put forth the audience questions in addition to your own, of course. Now, I request Dr. Natarajan, we had one of our patients who wanted to share a bit about her life as an ROP child. May I request Dr. Natarajan to just share the short clip?
Any idea who has the video? Because it's in my mobile.
Raman will be able to have it. Raman, can you share that?
Yeah, she's Sonu Pereira, and I actually I know her from the time of birth. She's born in '98, and she's 22, and she's doing her master's now in Tata Institute of Social Sciences. And I have the habit of asking every small kid when it comes to the clinic, for whatever reason, I ask them, "What's your aim in life, and what do you want to do?" And particularly when they are visually impaired, I tell them that you should work on vision research. And I recently operated a child who was a 12-year-old who actually had both eye pellet injuries in Kashmir. And I told her, I know you are not able to get vision from no perception of light. She got perception of light. I said, you should get into vision research. I don't know whether anybody with a visually impaired are working on eye research. I'm not sure. I'm a mentor in RO, but I forgot to ask this question. Okay, is Raman playing the video? Raman?
Vivek or Raman, can you please share the video?
Lakshmi? Lakshmi?
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I see. No, not this.
Raman, the video from Sonu Pereira.
Sonu Pereira. Samir is writing Lakshmi.
Raman?
Lakshmi?
Sir, I will share the screen.
Okay. Not this one.
Not this one, Raman. Hello, Raman sir, not this one.
Well, technical issues here. So, Amit, do you still have any more questions?
She's okay. No, she's sharing.
Okay.
Lakshmi, what happened? Lakshmi? Are you able to play?
I think let's move on to the next one. We can come back to this.
Okay, I think maybe I will check. Okay.
Okay. May I request?
Yeah, I shared the screen, ma'am. It's not visible.
Asta?
Yeah, no, but it's not playing. Lakshmi, it's not
no, it did not play. It did not play. Dr. Natarajan, I suggest we move on to the...
Yeah. In the meantime, I'll see whether I
can... So, Raman, you can share there is a small... the Endowment team has been, in fact, very supportive of this program. And they have taken this opportunity to launch a product of theirs. So I request you all to give a few minutes. And Raman, you can share that and Dr. Asta can talk about it.
Hi, my name is Sonu Pereira.
Asta, you can go ahead with this. We'll go back to that later.
No, it's ready. Radhika?
Yeah, okay, sure.
So should I? Okay, you finish with
that. Yeah, let her finish with this.
Asta, you finish with it. I'm ready now.
Okay. Okay, sure. Raman, can you share from slide 1?
He's already sharing. He's already
Raman?
sharing.
No, it's in the middle of the press. So it's the middle of the press. Raman, can you share from slide 1? Okay, thank you. So this is the product which Endowment has launched recently about phenocaine assisted cataract surgery. So basically, for cataract surgery and IOL implantation, mydriasis is of major concern to all the ophthalmologists. And in the recent survey, stable mydriasis was rated as the most important factor. And despite the numerous advances in the cataract surgery, mydriasis remains a foremost concern among cataract surgeons. So next slide, please. The complications of intraoperative meiosis are all known to us. and it can jeopardize the quality of IOL implantation. It can cause complications like iris trauma, PC rent, as well as vitreous loss. And there are other intraoperative complications like risk of endophthalmitis and macular edema. So, next slide, please. So it goes without saying that stable mydriasis is of utmost importance for doing a good and uneventful cataract surgery, and it facilitates surgical maneuvering like cortical cleaning, capsular polishing, as well as for higher end IOLs like the toric IOLs, and helps us minimize the complications. So in 2013, the European Observatory of Cataract Survey emphasized the importance of stable mydriasis during surgery and was rated as 9 on a 10-point scale. And the overall result of the survey also indicates that stable mydriasis was more important to surgeons than the largest size of dilatation. So, so currently what we are using is topical mydriasis alone. So is that a solution? So what are the disadvantages of topical mydriatics are that first of all, delayed onset, limited bioavailability, multiple dosages, and inconsistent mydriasis with problems of intraoperative pupil meiosis. So next slide, please. So we're talking about the alternative here, which is the product launched by Endowment, which is Phenocaine. So it's an intracameral injection of mydriasis. So this the advantages of this are there is a prompt onset of pupil dilatation. The mydriasis is supposed to be quite stable and last throughout the surgery. It improves the intraoperative conditions during crucial steps such as IOL implantation. Is a safe and effective alternative with almost no risk of systemic exposure, and also associated with significantly less pain or sensation of pressure to patients just before IOL insertion. Next, please. So comparing intracameral injection versus topical mydriatics, 95% of pupil dilatation was achieved within a mean of 28.6 seconds after administration of intracameral injection. The mean pupil diameter was larger than 7 mm during entire surgical procedure. The intraoperative pupil diameter remained stable in the intracameral combination group and decreased in the topical group. No clinically significant change in pupil diameter occurred in the majority of intracameral combination group compared to the topical group, and the mean time of pupil dilation estimated for intracameral was 28.6 seconds versus 20 minutes for topical mydriasis. Next, please. So Phenocaine Plus is the product which is used for intracameral injection for achieving mydriasis. It consists of a combination of tropicamide, phenylephrine, and lignocaine. So it provides mydriasis as well as anesthesia to these patients. And the dosage is around 0.2 ml of Phenocaine Plus via intracameral route through the side port at the time of beginning of surgery. The shelf life is around 24 months. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Asta.
Thank you, ma'am.
Dr. Natarajan, would you now like to play the video by Ms. Sonu Pereira?
Oh, sorry. Now, did you see the screen?
No, but we could not hear it play.
No. Now can you see?
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
Chennai, where Dr. Lingam Gopal and Dr. Natarajan, operated my eyes, and successfully I can see.
Sir, please start this from the starting, sir.
I'm really blessed.
No, it's
in
fine.
That case, and I would, through this video, I would like to give a message that those who are premature babies, as in those who were born, who later realize that they should definitely do their checkup. They should definitely do an eye checkup, and those who are having premature deliveries, they should also make sure that they are doing these kind of checkups, because The possibilities of having the eye operated is mostly in the initial stages, as in when the age is kind of young, and not in the latter stages. And this is what happened with me. Even my other eye couldn't be operated, to be very frank. And yes, this is the vision. Today, Dr. Natarajan is still there with me as a support. Dr. Natarajan doesn't only operates his patients, but he also supports them throughout. He supports them in any way that he is able to support them. He got me introduced to people who use talking softwares. I was not knowing about any kind of talking software when it comes to laptops. Using laptops, I use my laptop independently today. I am doing my master's now, and also we have formed a group known as Light Beyond Vision. So this whole name, that is Light Beyond Vision, is an idea, is basically a message also. Light is not necessarily in your vision. Light can be without your vision also. So if you don't have vision in any of your eye, is also fine. There's no end. It's not the end of the world. Life can begin there in a different way also. So this is the motto that we have started this group for. We want to encourage people. We want to help them or walk with them in their ways, helping them and helping each other, in fact, taking steps ahead with different experience that we share. So anybody who is not having a vision, not necessarily you are not going to do anything in life. You are definitely having a lot of things to do in life, and Light Beyond Vision is here for the same reason. We just want to keep spreading awareness about how can you manage your life even if your eye operation is not getting successful. And yes, again, while signing off, I would like to say that anybody who is having a premature delivery or is a premature born baby, checking your eyes and the retina especially. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sonu. I'm sure you're watching live in the Facebook and YouTube. So thank you very much for your words. And I think, as I told in the beginning, I love encouraging patients to be interactive with the surgeon, and that's what I want to teach all the young people, that your role is not over as soon as you are actually treat them. And I think even if they have excellent vision, you continue relation with them. And I think I know many children, their parents, their grandparents, because they come to me and I sometimes remember them. And whenever I visited a US clinic, some of the clinicians I've seen making a note in their electronic medical record that this was the birthday or this was the mother's whatever day. So just to greet them. I think they're very happy when you tell them. But fortunately, God has given me memory. So whenever I see a patient, I know the retina picture. I don't know. That's my. So Mike, I keep joking with the patients because I work on AI. So I start my talk with the definition, what is intelligence? And then I say, what is artificial intelligence? Anyway, thank you, Sonu. And I know you wanted to be in the thing because for the time constraint, I'm happy I could play your video. Now, Dr. Radhika.
Yeah, thank you. That was a really very touching video, and thank Sonu for allowing it to be posted so widely so that it can generate awareness even in other people who may know others who are having preterm deliveries. It has been a fantastic evening, but we are running late, and it's time for us to
before
say...
thanks, Radhika, you can ask Mike's comments on the daily patients.
Okay, no, I was worried because we are already running out of time. Dr. Chiang, if you have any closing comments for us.
No, I really loved watching that video because I think it highlights so many different things. That one of the things that we do, and Dr. Natarajan, I love how Sonia is basically saying that you're really her doctor, not her eye surgeon or her ROP doctor that you've kept this relationship through life. And I really think that's one of those things that medicine is about, and love seeing somebody who's this age still talking about trying to inspire other people. And it's good that when we do the work that we do, it's good to see the patients kind of behind that.
Yeah, I think that's so true, because to be connected with the people that you're treating, I think that gives immense happiness. Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Chiang. Now I will hand over to Mr. Mohan, the administrator of Aditya Jyot Foundation, to give the formal vote of thanks, and that we will then close after that. Over to you, Mr. Mohan.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes,
Mr. Mohan,
yes.
Please.
Thank you, Dr. Radhika. Good evening to all. It is my privilege and honor to propose this vote of thanks on behalf of Aditya Jyot Foundation for Twinkling Little Eyes. Dr. Chiang, it was our honor that you accepted to receive this 4th Dr. A.P.J. Abdul Kalam Public Endowment Oration Award. Your oration today was very informative. We are indeed very grateful to you for your wholehearted participation and kind support. Thank you so much. I would like to thank Sonu Pereira for sharing her experience as a patient of ROP. I would like to express our gratitude towards Mr. Anil Nair for creatives and technical support. Also would like to thank Mr. Raman from Endowment Pharmaceuticals for their support. I would like to extend my gratitude to our chairman, Mr. Anantraman sir, who has been a constant source of support to us. Thank you, sir, for presiding over the function. I would like to thank our trustees, Shamala Gopinathan, Dr. Anil Kulkarni, and Dr. Uday Salunke. I would like to thank Dr. Radhika for hosting the event, Dr. Aishwarya, Dr. Murthy, Dr. Astha for their participation and their presentations. Thank you, Dr. Amit, for conducting such a great question and answer session on this occasion. And of course, this event was possible because of the visionary leadership of our managing trustee, Dr. Natarajan sir, who has brought exemplary clinicians and researchers to this platform and given us a benefit of knowledge they have shared. We all are grateful to you, sir, to provide such a dynamic leadership to the foundation. Last but not the least, I would like to thank all staff members of Aditya Jyot Eye Hospital and of Aditya Jyot Foundation for their support and participation. I hope all of you who viewed this program from across the world liked it. Thank you, one and all. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
I just saw the statistics, and I just saw the email from the Retina World Congress, where I'm a board of director. They said they have blasted this. And I think the whole idea was to create awareness that your work on ROP, Mike, as well as everybody, that should be screened well so that we can detect early and treat early. And that's how the subject was put. Can I request Mr. Entod Vivek, what's his name, Raman and Rahul, to stop the live